Paradigms at paradigms.life, the radio show and podcast that brings you inspiring people with visions of a viable future for life on Earth that includes humans. Hi, I'm the host of Paradigms, Baruch. Happy to be here with you. Thanks for tuning in. I think you're going to really enjoy this episode. My guest is a healthcare practitioner who has been practicing for a long time, and he has been writing essays basically about how to fix what's wrong with our world and with our country in the United States. That sounds like a really tall order, and it is, but he's a good thinker and he's got some great stuff to say. So we're going to talk with this interesting fellow and listen to some great music and hopefully spark some ideas that lead to action. All right, so let's do it and meet my guest on this episode of Paradigms. Phil Kosdan, welcome to Paradigms.
Good to be here. No, it's time to save the world. And that's what we're going to do here today. We're going to talk about how to do that, considering how bad things are.
Let's talk about that then. How are we going to save the world? You have been writing treatises, putting your ideas down for people to read, talking about the various systems in our country and in our world that are not working. Tell us about it.
It's on Substack. You can go to philosoph.substack.com. The basic idea is the elites that we have, the poor elites that we have, are not taking care of business, okay? And you can see from global warming, climate change, to the attempts to overthrow democracies, the war in Ukraine, you can tell the thing is not doing well, okay? And the reason I think it's not doing well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but one is the elites do not have plans to change things, okay? And all you see on media is this kind of, I don't know how to describe it, this like, yeah. You know, it's just personal attacks. It has nothing to do with what we should be talking about, which is policy. At least the Democrats a little bit talk about policy, not very much. Republicans, oh my God. You know, it's this, I don't know. I don't know whether social media has done it. I don't think so. I think the politicians have done this, you know, and it's just personal attacks and investigations and, you know, Donald Trump, good grief, you know. I went to NYU in the early 70s. I'm that old now, okay? There was a speaker there. They had a special fund and they invited big names, international names, intellectual names. And there was this one guy who came, I remember this, I'm just 20 years old, right? And he's a biologist, what they called an ecologist then, right? 1970, he's from France, okay, older guy. And he says, you know what biologists are telling us and ecologists are telling us is there's going to be no more human beings on this planet in a little while because of what we're doing to the environment. He didn't even talk about climate change and just what we're doing to the environment. And you can see for different species, sixth grade extinction, that is going on. Okay, although there are more human beings now. But he was saying there's going to be none, what most biologists and ecologists are saying, there'll be none at all. This is 1970, okay? He said, well, I disagree with them. I think there'll be a few left, right? But it's not going to be in the numbers that we have now, which was several billion less. We now have on the planet 8 billion people, okay? Mostly half of that is in Asia, okay, East Asia, okay, India, China, and East Asia. He's saying that in 1970, we'll have a few left. Well, what would that imply now? Okay, in the 21st century, 8 billion. Well, okay, if he's right, we'll have 100 million left, maybe 10 million human beings left, considering what's going to happen. The amount of suffering that will go on in this century for my grandchildren is just going to be horrendous, okay? Unless we do something, unless we do a lot, and unless we do it very quickly. In the early 60s, again, I'm very young, I'm even younger than the 20, I'm like 14 years old, the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? John Kennedy, Nikita Khrushchev, Cuban Missile Crisis. It almost went off. That was almost the end of civilization as we know it, and most human beings, if not all human beings. That's not that long ago. That's even before this guy is saying that in the 1970s. We almost got wiped out. It's close. Putin now keeps threatening nuclear war. Think it's not possible? Oh, it's possible. So in my old age, it's like, I'm just appalled. And we really need a good New World Order, not one just controlled by the United States that doesn't know what it's doing. They don't know what they're doing here, let alone, they're going to do this world, as Bush said, they're going to do this worldwide. The values that should back that up, okay? I got my speech, The values that should back that up are human rights, okay? Human rights, and one of the human rights is democracy. So the values in back of all the proposals I'm making, all the policy changes have to do with human rights. The basis is human rights, and we're not following human rights. You can just see in Iran, they're literally killing people, executing people for protesting government policy. What's happening in Ukraine? What's happening all over the world with these dictators is they're, killing people for exercising their human rights, all right? For exercising human rights. We can go into the details of that. I presented that to a friend, said, well, what are human rights? What is democracy? But if we want to do that, we can do that. Like I said, it's a set of proposals, the basis of which is human rights. The basis of which is really the Enlightenment, okay? We thought, the Enlightenment, it took place in the 17th century, 18th century, Thomas Jefferson, Rousseau, and all these other people, right? It took place way back when, and it started, the democracies, basically. It started the New World Order. It's not finished. It's not completed.
That's the first part of my conversation with Phil Kosdan. I've known Phil for decades. He's a really wonderful Chinese medicine practitioner, dad, grandpa, friend, and he's someone who really cares about humanity. We'll be back with more of this conversation and hear more of Phil's ideas. But first, here's a song by Marvin Gaye, Save the Children. This is Paradigms at paradigms.life.
I just want to ask a question. Who really cares to save a world in despair? Who really cares? There'll come a time when the world won't be singing, when the world won't be singing. Flowers won't grow, flowers won't grow, no. Bells won't be ringing, no bells won't be ringing. Who really cares? Who really cares? Who's willing to try? Who is willing to try to save a world? To save a world that's destined to die. That is destined to die. When I look at the world, when I look at the world, it fills me with sorrow. It fills me with sorrow. Little children today, really gonna suffer tomorrow. Really suffer tomorrow. Oh, what a shame. What a shame. Such a bad way to live. Such a bad way to live. Oh, who is to blame? Who is to blame? We can't stop living. We can't stop living. Oh, oh. Live life for the children.
Live life for the children. Oh, for the children.
You see, let's save the children. Let's save all the children.
Save the babies. Save the babies. And if you want them, you got them. Save the babies. Oh, the little feel you got feeling. You will save the babies. All of the children. But who really cares? Who's willing to try? Yeah, to save our world. Yeah, to save our sweet world. Save a world that is destined to die.
Marvin Gaye, Save the Children. If we're not working in support of the younger ones coming up behind us, what are we doing? Okay, here is the next part of my conversation with Chinese medicine practitioner and political theorist, Phil Kosdan. So how do we get the rest of the way?
You have to have proposals and plans. You don't just, oh, we're going to do it. Well, what are we going to do? You know, if you ask politicians, they say, oh, I want human rights. But then when you look at their actual proposal, no, they don't. You know, but it's my version of human rights or their version of human rights. It all has to be talked about. You have to have a method of basically educating us all, but exchanging information. And that doesn't go on. Okay. You hear a little bit more in social media, but everyone's screaming at each other. There's not civil discussion, civil discussion, right? Where people actually talk to each other, right? And it means something. And I think human rights is on the agenda. I mean, you can see it already. It's on the agenda with abortion, with gay rights, with what's taught in school. You can see it worldwide. Human rights are on the agenda. But there's no discussion. And I think we need to set up, first and foremost, is civil discussion in every district in the country. We lived in Vermont, right? What did they have every year? Town meetings, right? I mean, they were not always quite so civil, but people did talk to each other. You know, some people are grouchier than others, clearly, but they determined the town budget for the year. This goes on all over New England, right? You knew you were a citizen. You didn't just go to the polls once a year. That's it. That's not really living in a democratic society. That's really not living in a society that can change. Now the politicians decide what the agenda is, you know, and they don't have an agenda anymore. Why would they want an agenda?
So you're talking about participation. People need to participate. Democracy is participatory. It's not passive.
That's it. You remember the Students for a Democratic Society when we were in college? I don't know if they were there when you were. SDS, what did that stand for? Students for a Democratic Society. It went off on protesting the Vietnam War, protesting civil rights, and forgot, in a way, the original goal, which was to have a participatory democracy. I mean, they modeled themselves. What they wanted was Athenian early Athenian civilization, right? Where people really did, except it was the elite elite male property owners that participated in this participatory democracy. But it wasn't participatory democracy. It wasn't by a small board or by a king. Okay, they really did participate and make decisions, like killing Socrates and going to war. I mean, it wasn't a perfect system by any means and fell. Okay. But I think listening to the rhetoric that's going down, nationwide, worldwide. You need people to start talking and talking in a civil manner, across the country in a civil manner, and have those town meetings, district meetings. They can be in cities too, however many people we can decide on that. But you need a lot more of that. You need civil discussion. And then I could propose all my other proposals at those meetings.
So the first step we need to get to is having civil discussions, underline the word civil, where people really go in with an intention to participate, not to win. It can't be about winning, because so long as there are winners, it's a win-lose game. We need to play a win-win game where everybody wins. It's not about the identity issues and being siloed in our specific causes. It's got to be bigger than that, to where we really see all of humanity as a community. That's what I think.
That's human rights. Human rights is what comes first. I mean, yes, we all identify with a particular group. Okay, my family originally is Jewish. Okay, so that's the group, my family group. Okay, but I have to tell you, whatever your group is, number one is you're a human being before anything else. The group comes second. Read the Enlightenment scholars. Read Immanuel Kant, or read Rousseau, or read any of them, Voltaire. Human being first and foremost. Human being first and foremost. And the interests, your interests, human being first and foremost. Human rights first and foremost.
And then all those individual bits of identity become interesting, but not so crucial, because exactly. You already have a sense of place as a person. Because what those identity things do is give people a sense of place. I belong here. People need to feel that they belong somewhere.
I'm an American. I'm going to keep you out because you're coming from across the Rio Grande River. Or I'm going to keep you out because you're from Central America. Or I'm going to keep you out because you're from Russia and I'm in Ukraine, or vice versa. All these, I'm going to keep you out, because this is mine. You check out the history of how that became yours, right? The family history. United States, who was here? All the American, we call Indians, all Native Americans. Oh, and we came over and took it. All over Europe, it's the same thing. The Visigoths, the Goths, the Franks, the Celts, they all took over Europe. They're coming from Eastern Europe, right?
We'll be back with more of my conversation with Phil Kosdan about what do we need to do to fix things. What do you think about his ideas so far? It's all about human rights. And I would add the rights of all living things to exist. This is one of my favorite Linda Ronstadt songs, Give One Heart.
1, 2, 3, go.
Deepest mystery, harder to fathom than any sea, more precious than all the earth and sky. But nobody can tell you why. Give one heart, get back to, that's a paradox of I love you. So when you give your heart, you get one too. That's a paradox of I love you. If it is love for which you cry, know how it feels on the moon's dark side. If your baby loves you right, you can have skyrockets any old night.
From her album Hasten Down the Wind, that's Linda Ronstadt with Give One Heart. It's really true. You give love, you get love back. Now let's get back to my conversation with Phil Kosdan. How do we address the human old brain, fight, flight, or freeze, instinctual response to perceived threat, whether there's real threat or not? How do we address the ways in which that biological aspect of our being is not caught up with our social needs and processes?
How do you think? I'm going to ask.
I think awareness and education, really teaching people to recognize that they have those responses, to recognize the responses when they happen, to learn how to not let those responses drive the bus, and to learn to make conscious, deliberate choices not based on emotion. This is a long-standing direction for some humans in various psychological or spiritual or social traditions or whatever. Long-standing directions in paths of healing, you might say, people working with the mind. This has been going on for a long time. We obviously still have a long way to go. One of the problems is that because of the profit motive, people have discovered how to make money by keeping people stuck in their reactive, non-thinking state. And it is now an economic engine driving, certainly this country, is keeping people in their emotions and in their reactions and not in their good thinking. And that's a problem. And that, to me, then always comes back to we need to stop allowing people with certain kinds of tendencies and ambitions to be in positions of power. When someone is desirous of having power over others, then that person should not have power over others. That is the person who should not be in the decision-making role. It feels like it's circular, it's a conundrum. There we are.
Well, one of the ways of keeping those people out of power is, I considered after all these proposals, what if I became a politician and governor or president, right? And all I could think of was the first thing I needed to do was give away power, is to eliminate centralized power. Okay, look, this is a Republican platform. Limit the ability of government to tax you, But on the other hand, they want the government to restrict you in other ways. Okay, but I think what we need to do, this is my sort of anarchist base, is eliminate as much as power and control as possible. The only function of government should be to prevent harm between people, to prevent harm, to prevent murder, to prevent theft, all those instinctive things are, I'm going to take it from you or I'm going to kill you. That, to be blunt, male aggressiveness, okay? Male aggressiveness, it's not, you see some female politicians who have that same tendency, but it's much more instinctive male tendency to violence and to theft, okay? You can read this in the Enlightenment scholars, too. You can read it in even the ones who were more conservative. Is the function of government is to stop people from harming themselves. Even the conservatives were into that, okay? That's the only function of government, not to rule. You rule your life. You can do what the hell you want as long as you don't hurt someone else, okay? As long as you don't hurt someone else, you can smoke all the marijuana you want, take all the cocaine you want, okay? Whatever, have sex with whoever you want, okay? Make your medical decisions if you want, free speech, all those other things. Do whatever you want to do, but don't hurt someone else, okay? And that's the function of government, not to rule, not to tell you what to do. The only thing to tell people to do is not to hurt someone else. So, I could burn oil, I could drive my car, it doesn't matter. No, you're hurting everyone, right? The cost of your prosperity and use of power and use of oil power is one of the most harmful things you can do, right? The other thing to do is to demilitarize the planet. You know how much the United States dollars? Over $800 billion? And they all agree to it. Biden put it out. Oh, it was 750 under Trump. Oh, it's 850 under Biden. It's like, no, guys, Russia should be demilitarized. Everyone should forget militarization.
Absolutely.
You can use that money for the good.
And did you know that military activity on this planet is responsible for 40% of the greenhouse gas emissions? 40%. From the production and the deployment of all these weapons. I mean, imagine the pollution it takes to make a missile.
Absolutely. Well, Jeffrey Sachs, who's my favorite economist, he's at Columbia University. He's a world-famous economist, general of the UN, lots of books, okay? But he holds this conference, international conference, in how much would it cost? He wants to know how much would it cost to clean up the water in Africa, okay? The death rate before, not in Africa, the death rate before the pandemic, the highest rate was in infantile mortality due to unclean water, okay? Dysentery is the biggest killer of all, Well, what would it cost to clean the water up so there's no more dysentery? A couple of $1 billion. And you would employ people to create those facilities to do that. A couple of billion. We spend over 800 billion. You could clean up the water on the planet, have no dysentery whatsoever, with 10 billion, 20 billion, but it's almost next to nothing. What would it cost, to fix climate change, to do infrastructure in the United States, right? To do infrastructure worldwide, to do education worldwide. You could take the American military budget, and if you did it for positive things rather than killing people and competition, right? If you just use that whole budget, no one's going to attack you. Why would they attack you?
We'll be back with more of my conversation with Phil Kosdan about how to fix things, focusing on his ideas about communication and community and education. Here's some more music. Here's a song by Emmylou Harris from her album Stumble into Grace, Cup of Kindness. This is Paradigms at paradigms.life.
Gave yourself up to the mystery and sail the oceans looking for the secret of the key to unlock a truth that you may never find. For it was in a cup of kindness all the time. You feel the thirst, but none can make you drink. The answer's waiting for you here, but it's not what you think. It won't steal your soul or leave you blind. It was just a cup of kindness all the time. And when Mother Mary finally comes to call, she could pass right through your heart, leave no trace at all. While you were reaching for the sacred and divine, she was standing right beside you all the time. In the emptiness you can't seem to fill, beauty fades and pleasures cannot take away the chill, and the glamour lures you down into a lie. Oh, but the cup of kindness never will run dry. Hear the vandals howling down your walls, and arm yourself against the ones who'd wanna see you fall, till some holy grail cup of kindness all the time. And when Mother Mary finally comes to call, she could pass right through her heart, leave no trace at all. While you were reaching for the sacred and divine, she was standing right beside you all the time. What is this thing called love? This funny thing called love. Just who can solve its mystery? Why should it make a fool of me? I saw you there one wonderful day. You took my heart and threw it away. That's why I asked the Lord in heaven above, what is this thing called love? I saw you there one wonderful day. You took my heart and threw it away. That's why I asked the Lord in heaven above, what is this thing called love?
That's Ella Fitzgerald. What is this thing called love? Before that, we heard Emmylou Harris, Cup of Kindness. I've been talking with Phil Kosdan about how to fix things in the United States and elsewhere, all focusing on human rights and bringing people together to have civil discourse where people really learn to listen to each other, even when they disagree. And you've probably noticed the music I've picked is all about love and kindness. Okay, here is the next part of my conversation with Phil Kosdan. So there are people who have the resources to do that. They could just do it, but they don't. And so one of the things, and I read an article, and I can't remember where it's from, I'm terrible about that, about how having great wealth, having any experience changes our brains. We write new neural pathways based on our experience. So when you have great wealth, your experience changes and new neural pathways are formed. And the new neural pathways have names like entitlement. And so how do we remind Jeff Bezos? Because I know people who knew him back in the day, and they say he was a really nice guy and a really decent guy. How do we remind someone like that of their formerly held values of decency?
Actually, Bill Gates, it was the opposite. Bill Gates never, until he got married the first time, believed in giving away any money. It's actually his wife who changed him. I mean, now he's really different, you know. Okay, so here's another part of the plan that I'm putting out, okay? If you work for, and this is the human rights democracy part of the plan, okay? Everyone in the company should own that company, okay? So Amazon should be owned not just by Jeff Bezos, but by the whole company, and they vote for the board of directors and the person who's supposedly the CEO of the company. Everyone in that company votes for that. So the people in that company control that company. which probably the distribution of wealth in that company would change. All wages should be living wage. What are you going to work for? You mean you can't make enough money to live and your family to live on? That's harm, okay? But also maximum wage, okay? So that the wage can get distributed in that company more equitably. And the profit in that company, all profit should be distributed equally. That would motivate people within their company. You should hear the CEO of Home Depot, right? This guy who's in his 90s, who was the ex-CEO, billionaire, wealthy. Oh, those people the people who work now don't want to work. They just want handouts. To get people to work, it's like slave mentality. Of course, because the organization we have now of companies is slavery light, okay? You don't control your company. The company controls you. So minimum wage, maximum wage, control of companies. And it's, how can I say, the motivation to get rich, the motivation to be the head of a company is still there. If you're that kind of character, I know people who are ambitious and have done incredibly well, right? There are different kinds of people, and we can benefit by their assertiveness and aggressiveness even, but we should limit it because, okay, I do Chinese medicine. I'm an acupuncturist, right? The basis of the theory of Chinese medicine is not unlike the old philosophy in Greece that no one in either place ever followed. Moderation in all things, okay? Now, if you want to explain why usually someone is ill in Chinese medicine, it's because they've done everyone has a different constitution, okay? But when you do that constitution to extremes, that's when you get ill, okay? Same constitution. You do it to an extreme, they're all healthy unless you do it to extremes. And that's what's going on in advanced capitalism is extremes. These people are extremists, and you can see the pathology of that extremism.
We'll be back with the final part of my conversation with Phil Kosdan after hearing some more music, starting out with Bob Dylan.
We live in a political world. Love don't have any place. We're living in times when men commit crimes and crime don't have a face. We live in a political world. Icicles hanging down, wedding bells ring and angels sing and clouds cover up the ground. We live in a political world. Wisdom is thrown into jail. It rots in a cell, misguided as hell, leaving no one to pick up the trail. We live in a political world where mercy walks the plank. Life is in mirrors, death disappears up the steps into the nearest bay. We live in a political world. Courage is a thing of the past. The houses are haunted, children are unwanted. Your next day could be your last. We live in a political world, the one we can see and can feel, but there's no one to check. It's all a stacked deck. We all know for sure that it's real. We live in a political world. The cities of a lonesome fear. Little by little, you turn to the middle, but you're never sure why you're here. We live in a political world. Under the microscope, you can travel anywhere and hang yourself there. You always got more than enough room. We live in a political world, turning and thrashing about. As soon as your
off in Harlem. Yeah, good old Harlem. You have your fun under the Harlem sun, so drop me off in Harlem. There's Duke Ellington up in Harlem. He writes all his tunes in Harlem. And old Satchmo's still swinging way up in Harlem. All the cats are still up there. They're beating out those riffs and Apollo, Puerto Rico, to give you a great big lift. Yes, drop me off in Harlem. Yeah, man, beautiful Harlem. You get red beans and rice, it's very nice. Way up there in Harlem, that is.
Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington, Drop Me Off at Harlem. Just some great music. And Bob Dylan, Political World. Yes, it is. And now here is the final part of my conversation with Phil Kosdan. So I want to bring this around to what can people actually do to advance these ideas? What can someone listening to this radio show do to advance dialogue in their community or harm reduction as an ethos? What are your thoughts?
Well, one, of course, is to read my book and read the Substack essays. Two is, in your community, start town meetings, okay? I think they should take place every other month and start talking about each issue and bring people in to present different ideas and as a community to start talking. I don't think that's going to happen in Iran and Russia, but I think we should serve in the United States as an example to the world of how to do it. Okay, it ain't going to happen in China tomorrow either. It ain't going to happen in Nicaragua. But if we can serve as an example, well, we're not even close to serving. What do we serve as an example now? We're just as bad as anyone else.
We're clearly an example of how to conduct a really lame insurrection.
Oh, yeah, no joke. And now Brazil is showing that they're the same. And I think in civil discussion, one of the most important things is people should learn how to listen, okay? Not just to be civil to each other, but to listen to each other. I have had to unfriend some Trump people who are, Trump friends who are on Facebook or I knew personally. They do not listen. As soon as you present an idea that's contrary to theirs or is critical of theirs, they flip out. I mean, flip out. I couldn't believe people. It's like, what is wrong with you? Didn't you ever have a civil discussion in your lifetime? It's like, oh, you can see the reflection of that in the Congress. You can see the reflection of that in the insane Donald Trump. I mean, talk about pathology. I listen to him, I go, I can't believe you're saying what you're doing. Can't believe this. Oh no, it's believable because I can see it, and other people have taken up on it. And it's like, so it was, okay, I want to be able to convince you. I want to have discuss these ideas, but there's some people you can't discuss ideas with because they don't listen. They know how to speak and they know how to emote, but they don't know how to listen. And I think across the board, we need to develop, in education especially, we need to develop the ability to listen to each other, okay? We have education that's oriented to getting a job, to technology. Our education is oriented to that. It is not oriented in our public school system to be a citizen. I think it should be a primary part of education to be a citizen, to know how to interact with other people socially and personally, but societally as well. The education system needs to do that. They're trying to get an education that in Florida, that doesn't do American history. We've never done anything wrong. There was never slavery. But these people are nuts. You don't need nuts in power. I mean, I listened to, the whole thing with the Speaker of the House, insanity. The fact that that's an issue to begin with is insanity, But we need better education for citizenship, and it's a bootstrap operation. You need to get together first to correct your education system. Who controls the education system? You do have local school boards. Well, you really need the citizens to take over the power, okay, and take over the education. And it's not going to be easy. If anyone thinks, just the next election in 2024 and everything's going to be fine and blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry. You have gone so far down, so far to an extreme in this country and worldwide. It's going to take some effort. That effort, what to do? Start educating yourself. Start talking to other people for education, and then educate everyone else. It's an educational. What do you think I'm doing? What do you think the Enlightenment writers were talking about all over the place, right? And the kings were putting them in jail, and the local politicians were putting them in jail. Voltaire, they put him in jail.
Well, the Enlightenment was at the root of what we call public education.
That's right. Yeah.
So, Phil, obviously this is a much longer discussion than we can have just today, but I just want to appreciate the writing you've been doing, and we're going to point people towards your Substack and the book you wrote and your ideas, and just encourage people to take these ideas and talk about them with other folks.
This is my beginning, but I'm going to really try to sell this. I think I've always been fairly modest in my life. And now in my old age, you go, oh no, Phil, you don't understand. These ideas are important to get out there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Phil Kosdan, thank you so much for talking with me on Paradigms and sharing your ideas, which come from deep commitments. If you'd like to know more about Phil and check out his book and his Substack, here is some info. You can find his Substack at philosophe, philosophe.substack.com. And Phil wrote a book, which he referred to in our conversation, called Solutions, a Wiseacre's Guide for Cleaning Up the New World Odor. And you can find that on alibris.com, alibris.com. Phil has been talking about these ideas for a long time and decided now was the time to really put them out there. So I hope you'll check them out and take what makes sense to you and do something with it. Maybe get some community meetings going where you live, some town meetings. And if you want to know more about that, you can just look up town meetings in Vermont, because they happen every year and have for hundreds of years. This is how we can make things better, through civil communication. That doesn't mean agreement. It means treating each other with respect even when we disagree. And it means conducting ourselves in a manner that is conducive to civil discourse, staying calm, understanding that beliefs and ideologies are not everyone's truths, and that we need to be open to other people's realities with that one primary criterion that Phil talked about: no harming others. Thank you, Phil. Really appreciate you and what you're putting out into the world. If you enjoyed this episode of Paradigms, I hope you'll check out our archive where there are interviews with other wonderful thinkers offering meaningful ideas that we can work with to make things better for everyone. Paradigms.life. You can also find Paradigms on YouTube at Paradigms Podcast and wherever else you find your podcasts. Paradigms has a Patreon campaign going to raise funds to help pay the costs of the show, things like server space and royalties for musicians. If you'd like to support Paradigms, please go to patreon.com/paradigms. We really appreciate your support. I really appreciate what Phil has to say, and I agree with him. I think community is the answer to most of our ills. If we saw each other as human and identified with each other instead of seeing each other as somehow other or different, we could make the changes we need to make. Demilitarization is definitely one of them. Phil and I talked about it briefly, but I just want to stress that when we look at the world today, we see military activity, it's always about greed or ideology. It's always about power over, and it's incredibly destructive. It offers us no value. It doesn't make anything better for anyone. Okay, lots to think about and feel about. Two things in closing. One, I just want to say thank you, David Crosby, for all you gave us. You are already missed. And I'm going to leave you with one more song. This is a Laura Nyro song. It's one of my favorites. It's called Save the Country, from her live record, The Loom's Desire. All right, Baruch signing off for this episode of Paradigms. We'll be back next time with more inspiring people. Until then, let the word for the week be community. Let's just notice our communities, the ones we're in. You don't have to make it happen. You're already in community. We just need to notice. All right, we'll see you next time on Paradigms. Be well.
I wrote this song many moons ago. Come on, people, come on, children, come on down to the glory river. Gonna wash you up and down. Come on, people, come on, children. There's a king at the glory river, and the king loved to sing in the sun. We shall overcome. I got fury in my soul. It's gonna take me to the glory goal in my mind. I can't study war no more. Save the people, save the children. In my mind I can't study war. 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 There'll be trains of blossoms, trains of blossoms. There'll be trains of music. There'll be music. Oh, I can't study war. In my mind I can't study war. There'll be trains of blossoms, trains of blossoms. There'll be trains of music. There'll be music.
You've been listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life.